Vanderputten, and I'm honored to be a member of the Board of Trustees. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our service, whether you're a newcomer, and I was really pleased that both our services, we have had new families join us, so great, welcome. So welcome whether you're a newcomer or whether you have been around for a long time. If you have been around for a long time, I hope you are contributing your stories to the 75th anniversary celebration, which is really incredible. UUCH strives to be an inclusive place where all are welcome, regardless of gender, race, economic status, or beliefs. I came to UUCA for a sense of community following the death of my husband a few years ago, and I have found it here, even during the pandemic and the virtual coffee hours and the virtual services. I have consistently found inspiration in the services, the covenant groups, and even in the board meetings. Believe it, the people who serve on the board have been so thoughtful and committed to this church. But I am most grateful that UUCA has given me a chance to live with purpose. The classes and seminars on racial equity have deepened my knowledge of and appreciation for the systemic racial inequities in the country, in Arlington, and even here in our beloved community. So I'm looking forward to continue to grow during Black History Month at UUCA and to Reverend CTC's service today. Please look in the Connection newsletter for the wonderful adult religious education offerings that are available to us. In particular, there will be a new series for young adults which will start next Sunday. See Reverend Amanda for more details on that if you want to attend. And join us for coffee hour in the back for some more community and conversation. Thank you.
So you all are here because you enjoy the space, the music, and hopefully each other. Let us rise, embody our spirit, and greet each other. And if you have your phone with you, let somebody know you're here, because we're going to love Blackness together. So tell someone you're here and you're loving it. Let's say okay, sit down. You greeted and you meted. Hopefully some of you did take out your phones and let somebody know where you were, because, you know, we're in the 2020s now. We should do that. I have a call to worship for you that was written by the Reverend Lynn Cox. I will warn you, it has a few more words than call to worship normally does, but I want you to breathe and settle and listen to what Lynn offers us. This is called Invitation. Come, you accidental pilgrims, you who find yourself on a journey of surprise and wonder. Come, you who emerge into this place as an act of liberation. Come, you who seek mindfulness and want a place to test your thoughts. You who bring hearts of all kinds, heavy hearts, rusty hearts, hearts that have been broken open in revelation, hearts that are full of love to share. Come, Come, you who seek courage, and you who have more courage already than you realize. You who stand behind the curtain, gathering up the resources to claim your truth and share it with the world. Come, you who have been in a bubble and are poised for transformation. Come. We begin our story again here, gathering courage and love, mindfulness, and a sense of purpose. We gather as a people of all ages, of different abilities, different backgrounds, and different perspectives. Come. We share a covenant, a direction for this shared journey, and a commitment to encourage and challenge one another to spiritual growth and development. This path will ask much from us, but let us move forward with love. Let us move forward with appreciation for one another. Let us move forward knowing we are never alone. Whoever you are, whatever your gifts, come. You are welcome to join me and each other on this journey. Come.
Each week, we light a candle of compassion in solidarity with those experiencing violence, loss, loneliness around the world. This week, as we begin our celebration and honoring of Black History Month, we hold all whose histories have been erased or are being erased even now, and commit ourselves to telling the fuller history. I invite you now to join us and to join Unitarian Universalists around the world as we light our chalice. Your words are found in your order of service. We gather together as a community of memory and hope to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love. We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing both light and warmth to the world.
Our opening hymn is Love Will Guide Us, number 131. Please rise in body or spirit and sing.
Count you in after our vamp gets going. One, two, three. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us. We'll lead the way on the road to be together. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
So this is one of the most fun parts in the service for you all, because nobody knows how it's going to turn out. This is the wisdom lesson. I invite our young people to come forward because we're going to have a great story. We're going to learn a little bit from Reverend Karen first. But you guys come on up, have a seat. So Karen here actually wrote this book, or conceived this book. Is that better?
Published,
Conceived.
all
Come
those
on in.
things.
Come on in, Meg.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me today. I'm Reverend Karen Rasmussen, and I'm the founder and director of No Child Goes Hungry. I'm pretty much a one-woman nonprofit that feeds both kids locally and all around the country. I have projects in 33 different states right now. My goal is simple: to eliminate childhood hunger, one kid and one meal at a time at the grassroots level. No Child Goes Hungry is so excited to have just published its first children's book, Emilio's Very Bright Idea. The book shows the impact of one child, one person, and what they can do to feed kids. My colleague, Reverend Louise Green, and I are just over the moon to have Emilio in print. All proceeds of the sale of the book, 100%, goes directly to feeding kids. Come on back to the table after worship and buy one for yourself or to give as a gift. Thank you, and enjoy the story.
Thank you, Karen. So this book, guys, is called Emilio's Very Bright Idea. Are you ready? I think. I know you all want to hear the story too, and you folks at home, but I'm just going to sit down with them and read the story, so just like be quiet out there. But you can listen. Okay, let's see. Every morning, Emilio walked to school exactly the same way. Now that he was in the 3rd grade, he got to walk the 4 blocks to school alone. He had a key on a straw sombrero chain, come on up, from San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, where his grandmother lived. See, there's the sombrero with the key. He walked along the big community garden and he shouted, "Hi there," to Mr. Cleo Bagdet, who was digging in the soft dirt. So there he is digging. Look at the garden. There's squash and there's tomatoes and there's some things growing. Is that corn?
Lettuce.
You think that's corn?
I think it's lettuce.
It's corn, survey says. Then Emilio counted the 13 peach trees in the garden and saw how the hard green fruit was starting to ripen. "Good morning, peach trees," he said. Next, he walked over to see the house where his favorite little dog, Whopper, and the Buddha statue was out in front. There's Whopper and the Buddha statue. Emilio said, "Hello, Buddha. Hello, Whopper." Finally, he landed at the school playground and he went up on the climbing tower. He sat high on the top and he watched all the people come into the school like birds flying into a great big nest. After looking for a long time, Emilio climbed down and he went into his school, Truesdale Elementary School. He went in just before the bell rang. His first class that morning was his favorite class, social studies. His teacher, Mr. James Dixon, began showing lots of slides with children's faces and numbers. He explained how around in the city of Washington, D.C., and all over the USA, all around the world, kids were hungry. Can you all read this? What's it say?
Hunger and poverty, what can we do?
Hunger and poverty, what can we do? Even at Truesdale Elementary School, too many kids were hungry. Emilio's face began to scrunch as he thought about it. He knew some students ate breakfast in the cafeteria before school started, and they got lunches with vouchers.
That happens in our school.
That happens at your school?
Yeah.
Some kids eat breakfast there?
Yeah.
Yeah? Does that happen at your school too? Yep. And do they get some vouchers and get lunch there too? Yeah?
See.
Yep. Same. Then a memory of his grandmother popped into his head. He loved to visit her in Mexico in the summer with his parents, and he always asked for the same birthday dish. Emilio loved enchiladas. Dark, spicy chili sauce with grated chocolate was poured over hot, handmade corn tortillas with melty cheese. When Abielter put that steaming plate on the table, she always shouted the same words and gave Emilio a big hug. La comida es amor, mijo. La comida es amor. In social studies class, Emilia's arms started to wave in the air like the flag on a school pole in the high wind. Mr. Dixon sighed and asked, Emilio, what is so important that you have to say it right away? Emilio took a deep breath and he thought about all the hungry children in the pictures that the teacher was showing. Abielter's voice was singing in his head, so he yelled out very, very fast, La comida es amor. Can you guys say that? La comida es amor. Well done. The class giggled and they wiggled in their seats. Mr. Dixon stared at Emilio and he asked, excuse me, what does that mean? Emilio said it again more slowly. Say it with me. La comida es amor. Abielter always says it. It means food is love. Mr. Dixon, hungry kids here at Truesdale need to eat because they need love. We have to do something, Emilio said. There was silence in the room, and everybody stared at him. Mr. Dixon sat down on the edge of his desk, and he put down the remote control. He looked at Emilio, and he spoke slowly. What do you think we need to do, Emilio? Emilio thought very hard. He wasn't quite sure what to say. He wished his arm had never flown up in the air like the flag on the school pole. But then a tiny idea, see, that's the idea, suddenly came to Emilio, like a light bulb, that's right, like a light bulb popping on. What if hungry kids could go to a pantry at the front of the school and just take something home to eat? He spoke faster now because the idea was getting even brighter. We could build a little free pantry. Food would come in all the time. Food would go out all the time, right here at school. So here's a pause for a shameless commercial. You all know what a little free pantry is, right? Yes. Why do you know what one is? Because why? Say it again. Because we have one. Thank you. We could build a little free pantry. Food would come in all the time. Mr. Dixon seemed surprised, and he nodded his head as Emilio's idea kept shining and grew brighter and brighter. Emilio, you just had a very bright idea. At lunch, Emilio's friends ran to catch up, wanting to talk about the idea. They each said what they could bring to the pantry for hungry kids. Omari said she would bring peanuts. She liked the thick, sweet peanut and kale stew that her Auntie Flo made in South Carolina. Sunya was to bring chickpeas. She loved to cook masala with her older brother and pour the spicy tomato sauce over basmati rice. Eddie Cruz would contribute peanut butter and strawberry jelly. His mom, she was an architect, and she made sandwiches in little tower shapes with cookie cutters. Emilio knew exactly what he would bring. Dark, unsweetened chocolate from molded sauce, the kind that was in his grandma's little kitchen. When he left school that day, Emilio passed the front steps and he imagined a new wooden cabinet of food sitting right there. He could see it now, a little free pantry to hold food for hungry kids.
I would love to have that at my school.
It took a while for the little free pantry to be built. First, he had to explain his idea to people. Then money had to be raised and supplies purchased. People worked together to cut the wood, to build the cabinet, to paint the pantry in bright colors. Look, so they're cutting and they're painting, and there's a guy with a screw gun putting the doors together. And what's going to happen?
Pantry.
Pantry, exactly. Emilio and his parents put the first food in the little free pantry. They opened the shiny purple and green doors. They smelled the fresh wood and the fresh paint. They put rice, beans, and tortillas, and chili powder, and dark chocolate inside. Amelia's very bright idea was real. Truesdale Elementary School had a big potluck dinner to celebrate. Look at that. That's Oreo cookies, isn't it? Yeah. Look at the other stuff that they have. So they had peanut butter and jelly and banana towers. That's his favorite dish. That's exactly right. What is that? Do you remember what it's called?
Enchilada.
Enchiladas, right? That's the peanut and kale stew. His teacher, Mr. James Dixon, brought little packages of Oreo cookies.
Pizza.
And there's pizza, and there was fresh pies from the peaches in the community garden. At the very end of the first ever annual Truesdale Picnic Fiesta, there was a special speaker. Amelia's grandmother flew in from Mexico to celebrate the little free pantry. She stood up on a milk crate and she shouted in a very, very excited voice, "Don't forget, mijos." What did she say?
La comida
Es amor. And what does that mean? Food is love. La comida es amor. Food is love. Thanks for listening, guys. Yeah, I appreciate you being so patient. We're going to sing you out now. Off to your classes. Everybody, please join in. The words are in your order of service.
Two, three, four. Peace to you on your way. May you grow in love each day. Meeting new friends and opening your hearts to the wonders of the world you will find. To the wonders of the world you will find.
This is the place in our service where we settle in a little bit. It's a moment for prayer or for meditation, for centering. This morning I offer you somewhat of a meditation that was crafted by Heather Ryan Starr. Before we begin, let's take a breath. And let's let that out. And maybe one more breath in. And let that out. And let yourself be here. Right here, in this space. On this day, as with so many Sundays, we come in from the whirling world, from the wind, the bright sun, the push and pull of time and tide. We come in from the tumult of global news and local stories, from the pain we hear in the world, from the demands on our spirits. The idea that we must do this now, finish this now, do this thing. We come in, stop, breathe. Come into this sanctuary from the windstorm. Leave the rush of speeding drivers on the roadways. Leave the rustling and the rattling that fills our homes and our lives. Leave the dirty dishes in the sink. Leave that busy house calling you to clean it. Stop. Breathe. Give your attention to what's going on around you. Come into this place where we can find our groundedness again. Come in. Come in from the wind. Come in from the whirl. Come into this place of peace and compassion. Stop. Breathe. Come in.
Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí y al corazón cántale tu compasión. Sopla al volar, sube en la mar hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arráigame, libérame, fuente de ven a mí, Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning. 75 years ago, the Arlington Fellowship of All Souls Unitarian Church in D.C. was holding Sunday services just down the street at Barrett Elementary School. The fellowship officially became a church in the spring of 1948. And this spring, we will be having a number of activities to celebrate our anniversary. Stay tuned. Now, the history of any church is filled with stories. I would like to share a story about Mildred Eldridge, a black member of our church who was arrested for attending a church picnic in 1958. This arrest is only the surface story. For the fuller story, let me first take you back to 1949, when the Women's Alliance at UCA organized a 2-week interracial summer school, integrated in its staff and children. It lasted for 15 summers. But also in 1949, a federal judge ruled on a lawsuit brought by black parents in Arlington, asking for equal resources for their high school. You see, Arlington had a white high school and an underfunded black high school. In a judgment that defied the facts, the judge denied relief. So the NAACP changed their tactics. Instead of suing for equal resources, they sued for full integration, which led to the Brown versus Board of Education case in 1954. And in Virginia, what did that lead to? Massive resistance. The governor formed the Gray Commission to study how the state would respond to the Brown decision. Our congregation voted to send a delegation to testify before the committee. UCA was the only church to testify on behalf of full integration. The state then enacted the Stanley Plan, intended to keep segregation in place. They created a pupil assignment board, which gave state appointees the power to deny admission to white schools based on neutral factors, psychological, sociological concerns. Well, in the midst of all this, the Eldridge family in 1957 moved to Arlington. Bob Eldridge was a D.C. police detective. Mildred was the Naval Gun Factory clerk. They joined the Unitarian Church of Arlington and enrolled their children in RE and in summer workshops. In early 1958, the Eldridges and other black parents tried to enroll their children in the white schools of Arlington, and they had to go through that assignment interview process. Let me share with you one transcript of an interview with Dorothy Ham and her husband. So it begins with the interviewer. Is this application for transfer being made solely to enforce the so-called constitutional right? Mrs. Ham, I do not quite know what you mean by so-called. And then Mr. Ham, and I can picture him, slamming his hand on the table maybe in his response. There is the so-called again. I do not know what you call it, but so far as I am concerned, it is a law. Sadly, all 28 black students were denied admission. 9-year-old Bobby Eldridge was denied admission because his parents were told, quote, it would be too much of an emotional adjustment for a lone Negro child among 600 white children, close quote. In that tense spring of 1958, the church held its all-church dinner. Wade Latham was board chair. Here's a quote from his memoirs. I remember our every member dinner that year at Kenmore School, with the police outside for the warrant for the arrest of Reverend Ross Weston, Bob Eldridge, and myself, because Bob was with us in a public school, close quote. Fortunately, the police decided not to serve the warrant. Then we go to June of 1958. The church has its annual picnic at Bonnier Park down on Wilson Boulevard. Bob Eldridge was working that day. Mildred and her 2 children were at the picnic. Let me share with you a first-person account from our archives. Ross Weston was dressed casually for the outing and spent a few minutes conversing with Mrs. Eldridge. An outside observer advised the police that some sailors entertaining a black lady in our park. Motorcycle policemen roared into the picnic and arrested Mrs. Eldridge for disturbing the peace, close quote. When she was ordered to leave, Mrs. Eldridge was kind of like Rosa Parks. She stood her ground. Her friends took her 2 children home with them, and Mrs. Eldridge was taken to jail, accompanied by Reverend Weston. Now, the magistrate did not know what to charge her with. The initial charge was conduct tending to incite a riot. The magistrate called the Commonwealth attorney and changed it to disorderly conduct. While the church paid for her bail and for defense attorneys to defend her, she was found not guilty. But it must have been a very trying time. And Ross Weston shared this reflection in a sermon that very month. The person I feel most sorry for is little Bobby Eldridge. When his mother came home Sunday night from the police station, he said to her, "Mommy, why don't they leave us alone?" I'm not sure any of us have a real answer to that. Close quote. Well, the full story does not end with the arrest, though. In August, the church arranged for contributions to a scholarship fund for Bobby to attend Burgundy Farm Country Day School for that school year. And months later, in February of 1959, 4 black students desegregated the Arlington school system. In the fall of 1959, Bobby Eldridge was accepted at Patrick Henry Elementary School. Now, on his first day of school, the family, to their surprise, noticed a police car outside their home. The police decided they wanted to drive him to school, which must have been kind of a scary ride for Bobby. The next day, though, he walked to school, and the good news is he adjusted well. He played the clarinet in the Patrick Henry Elementary School Orchestra, and he went on to become a professional jazz musician. He even played here in the sanctuary a couple of times in the past couple of decades. So there are more stories even within these stories, and I say, may we keep looking for the fuller stories around us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill, for bringing to life our history from our archives. Bill has some photographs in the back of Fellowship Hall, and I hope that you will go and check them out, some newspaper articles as we continue to learn that fuller story. Also in the back of Fellowship Hall is our Share the Plate recipient this month, Little Friends for Peace. Here at UUCA, we share 70% of our collections on Sunday with another organization. And we're so glad to share this month with Little Friends for Peace, which has partnered with UUCA, with this congregation, for more than 20 years, offering summer camps and programs throughout the year for students and for parents and teachers, all centered around the idea of conflict resolution, conflict transformation, and peace building. You may be interested in getting involved yourself with Peace Camp this summer. There will be a session held here at the church, and you are warmly invited to be part of that magic. You can reach out to Molly Jewell, who's listed in the order of service. I hope, too, that you will contribute generously to the work of Little Friends for Peace. Again, 70% of all we collect goes to support LFFP, and 30% remains in the congregation to support our ongoing work here and in the community. You can donate by credit card, check, cash in the plate, whatever works for you. We are grateful for your generosity. Will our ushers come forward to receive your gifts and our musicians to offer their gifts of music? As the ushers come forward, I invite you to turn to your order of service so that you might join in our offering blessing written there. We bless and receive these gifts, opening our hearts to true generosity. Let us be grateful when we give, be it time, talent, or treasure. Let us be grateful for our needs and the experience of vulnerability. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts with this, yes, you had it right, to nurture this congregation. Our reading this morning comes from a wonderful book called The Darkness Divine, A Loving Challenge to My Faith, written by the Reverend Dr. Kristen L. Harper. Harper speaks in this book about her experience as a Black Unitarian Universalist minister. And she does so in prose and in poetry, and the reading I'll share includes a little of both. So I invite you into that space as we hear Reverend Dr. Harper's words. As a result of racist language and imagery, many BIPOC have felt betrayed, traumatized, and excluded. We are suspicious of any white assertion that Black lives matter and are hurt when white people fail to appreciate the full reality of our existence. And because white people continue to cause harm to people of color in our families, friendship circles, communities, and nation, because they lack the imagination needed to dismantle white supremacist culture, their building and maintaining relationships with us remains a challenge. Many faith communities, including my own, have made tremendous strides in our justice work. They are following the lead of marginalized communities, becoming allies where possible, and showing up when asked. However, there are generations of mistrust to cross and continued white supremacist thinking to shed before authentic relationships can grow and survive. As I said nearly 20 years ago in my sermon, Bridges Go Both Ways, the first things we so often fail to do is building bridges that go both ways, bridges of friendship, bridges of relationship, of trust and honesty, of accountability and reconciliation. This is what is so hard. BIPOC and white people learning to trust one another, be with one another, truly care for and be committed to one another. The poem, It Begins With. It begins with knowing your biases, your stereotypes, your assumptions, your judgments, and how to set them aside and receive the person who is in front of you, not the one you think you know. It begins with owning your power and privilege, your position and your comfort, and being willing to let it go. It begins with truly looking at one another, noticing that not all Black and brown people look alike, are alike, believe alike, experience or react alike. It begins with reaching out, making the first move, offering the first invitation for coffee or tea, or a walk in the park, or a trip to a museum. It begins with hello, not a touching of hair or bodies, just hello. It begins with curiosity about our full lives, not about the hard experiences, not if Black and brown skin burns in the sun, not about dreadlocks or braids or straight Black hair. It begins with listening, not constantly centering yourselves, but to whatever is shared, whatever is believed, whatever is meaningful, whatever might connect. It begins with attention to your words, your language, your expressions, and the impact they have, without dismissing or belittling. It begins with understanding, not making judgments about Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, humanist, or earth-centered faith, understanding that there are many ways to believe, all valid, all restorative, all equal. It begins with accompaniment, following, not leading, learning, not teaching, supporting, not just taking. It begins with commitment to stay with each other through the discomfort and anger, to bridge the barriers, to build trust. It begins with accepting the joy and the challenges, the quirky or protective actions, the need for space where you may not be able to follow, the need for distance that you may not be able to bridge. It begins with believing. The experience is so foreign from your own, the daily fights for dignity, the trauma of a life of surviving the gauntlet of hate and ignorance, the mixture of laughter and tears, passion and sorrow. It begins, whether a relationship, a friendship, or a partnership, it begins with you. The Reverend Dr. Kristen L. Harper.
We are blessed with amazing music here. And I get to say that every Sunday. We are blessed with music that soothes the spirit and stirs the heart. And I am grateful. Thank you all. Thank you all. So a few weeks ago, Amanda and myself and our intern minister, Greg, were doing our jobs and planning worship. We were in a worship team meeting talking about February and it being Black History Month. And we get to that point where we're pitching titles just a little bit. And what I want you all to know is that sometimes it deteriorates into silliness, the pitching of the titles. Just sometimes, just a little. And it's lucky that there is more than one minister in the room to reel the other ones back in a little. So we were talking about titles, and being myself in full frontal Carol, I was like, first Sunday in February, loving Blackness. And Amanda was very helpful. She said, so, are you sure? Are you sure? And I said, yes, they're ready. They're ready. They can do it. Loving Blackness. And then I went home and I thought about it. And I almost retracted the title for this sermon. And I thought about it some more. And I realized that a piece of the evolution for me to title it that, instead of my usual Black History Month sermon, which is why I hate Black History Month, showed an evolution of spirit in myself. There obviously had been some changes within my heart. So this is Loving Blackness. The other preface I want to give you is that my personal life is filled with a term that Black people use all the time, Black joy. I have Black women friends who I call the queens. I have 2 grandsons who are the color of a cup of coffee with a little too much cream. They're kind of khaki colored because they're biracial. I have a stepson who is above 6'2", who is gorgeous and ebony skinned. So I have a lot of Black going on outside of this building, and it is truly, truly Black joy that perpetuates and is in my life. So getting to a point where I want to talk about loving Blackness is like a really good thing for me personally. It also means I trust you in a way that I didn't 18 months ago. And that's important too, that I feel like if I'm going to talk about something like that, I can bring more of my fullest self here. So the sermon. First, let me give voice to a few of the names that are going to be familiar. Michelle Obama, Shirley Chisholm, Hank Aaron, Arthur Ashe, Louis Armstrong, Dizzy Gillespie, Althea Gibson, Barbara Jordan and Dorothy Height, Langston Hughes, Frances Harper, Bessie Coleman. Stop. Breathe those in. Breathe in that piece of history. Breathe in the idea of the music they created, of the steps they took that no one had ever taken before. Breathe that piece in. A few more names. With each one of these, undoubtedly a picture is going to appear in your mind. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Sojourner Truth, Oprah Winfrey, Rosa Parks, Ella Fitzgerald, George Washington Carver, Frederick Douglass, and let's just bookend this, Barack Obama. Wonderful people, intelligent people, Black people whose stories must be told, whose stories are in danger of disappearing unless we repeat them, Black people whose stories are part of the American story, which is a story that is incomplete without them. So I start by saying some of the names. It's also important to note this. As I have shifted and learned to love Black History Month, I've also learned to realize that Black History Month can do as much harm as it does good. By boiling the collective journey of Black Americans down to a handful of programs, of specific signage, of concerts, and this 28-day party for Black joy, we do as much harm as good. We decide that Black people are important, and then on March 1st, we shift right back and resume our usual state of forgetfulness and denial that they are here and that their history matters. It would be extremely unfortunate if mainstream America decided that the annual emphasis on this particular segment of history was no more. We need Black History Month, don't get me wrong, but we need to figure out why the shortest, wettest, grayest month of the year has been set aside for people of a certain skin color. Is it really needed? Is Black History Month relevant? Do we even know why we have it or where it began? And should this entire month of February be designated, be marked to honor this one specific group of Americans instead of finding out a way to fold their stories into what is American history? In January, before the preaching on MLK Sunday, before the special gospel concerts, before the African drumming events, before the middle school essay writing contest, that's when the murmuring about the value of Black History Month really begins. And often there's disagreement and there's heated discussions. I have heard conversations in the CVS, on the Metro, waiting in the doctor's office, and at my own dinner table, where people across America, where people in my own neighborhood are asking, do we really need Black History Month anymore? My response is a bit of incredulity right now. Really? Seriously? Is it possible Black History Month has outlived its usefulness? Has designating February as the time to recognize, honor, celebrate the perseverance, intelligence, and success of African American people, has it lost its purpose? No. Sometimes I feel that way, but most of the time, I am of the mind that we need Black History Month. We just need to do it better. And we need to figure out a way to carry the message past the last day of February into March, into April, into May, and not give up on it until Juneteenth rolls around and you're like, oh yeah, some black stuff is happening again. We should do something about that. I think that part of the reason people don't want to continue with Black History Month is because it hurts. The history of Black Americans has been lied about, has been sanitized, has been left completely out of history books in some of the states here in the United States. Legitimately left out without consequence. The full story of African American and their experience is not consistently and regularly being told, and it's because it has tough, icky, sticky, blisteringly painful parts to it. We'd rather just leave it out, or celebrate it the way we have been celebrating it, with some concerts and a gospel sing and a little bit of drumming, and then let February end. We have made tremendous strides in this country. Don't get me wrong. Mandatory segregation in schools, restaurants, and community spaces, it's over. We've been able to swim in any pool we want to for a really long time. Movie theaters, we don't have to only sit in the balcony anymore. And church pews, like these, we can sit in any single one we want to. The floor has been opened. Things have absolutely changed. But in extremely large segments of America, the US population, both black and both white, just don't see the picture of real black life very clearly. How many of you had heard the term black joy? A little more than a third? If this sanctuary was filled with more people of color, it'd be closer to 75%. It's really a thing. But it's not just ours, black joy. Black joy and loving blackness belongs to everyone, but that isn't going to happen unless we start to talk about it more. When we go through our days not knowing what the actual black experience is, Black Americans don't become the norm. They become that group of people, they stay that group of people confined to the month of February. I'm joyous and fantastic all month long, 12 months a year. And so is my family, and so are the things that we do. Confining us to 28 days makes no sense. So it isn't that we shouldn't have Black History Month. We've got to figure out how to do it better. It hasn't outlived its usefulness. But if it's going to be real, if it's going to be full, it has to become American history. We need the full story of who we are to know who we are. My children and my grandsons need to know where they came from, so they know where they can go. It is our responsibility to tell all of the stories. You can't figure out who you are when no one is telling you where you came from or that you have value year-round. We, and I'm using we in the broadest sense possible here, we as a people cannot determine how we arrived at some of the horribleness that is going on in our society, this excruciating idea of racism and distrust, and the physical harm being manifested on Black bodies. We can't truly discuss that and then eliminate it if we don't look at the entire picture, not just the 28 days in February. Without studying the entire story, including the parts we'd rather not see or feel or re-experience, we can't begin to right the wrongs and write the next chapter of our story. The way Black History Month is celebrated now, it's just problematic. That list of names that I read to you, think about all the names that aren't even on the list. I want to give you 3 examples, and technology is going to help me, so hang on. If I said the name Anna Arnold Hedgeman to you, do you know who that is? Any idea? Hedgeman was an advocate who worked with religious organizations and within the government to mobilize the civil rights movement. She was the first African-American graduate of Hamline University in 1922. She worked for religious organizations and the Young Women's Christians Association. In 1948, she served in the cabinet of New York Mayor Robert F. Wagner, the first African-American woman to do so. Anna Arnold Hedgeman. Here's another one. Irene Morgan Kirkcaldy. Ring any bells? Irene Morgan, in July 1944, was arrested when she refused to give up her bus seat to a white passenger in Virginia. She was convicted in a county circuit court. The decision was appealed. It went to the Virginia Supreme Court and later the National Supreme Court. With the help from lawyers of the NAACP, including Thurgood Marshall, the Supreme Court ruled in her favor. So we all know Rosa, right? Nobody knows about Irene or talks about her story. And one last one, Claudette Colvin. 9 months before Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white passenger, 15-year-old Claudette Colvin did exactly the same thing. Colvin was taking the bus home from high school when the driver ordered her to give up her seat. Colvin refused. She stood up and she said, "I have paid my fare. It's my constitutional right." 15 years old. I love that we know who Rosa is. I want my grandsons to know about Colvette. The last one I'll offer you is Jane Bolin. Does that mean anything to any of you all? Janebolin. Jane Bolin became the nation's first Black woman judge in 1939. Ever. 1939. She was also the first Black woman to graduate from Yale Law School and serve on New York City's family court for 4 decades. These stories are our stories. In this month that we have set aside for Black History Month, I ask you to use your devices, your computers at home, your phones, your laptops, to simply Google what Black Americans did, or to simply Google who should I know about in Black History Month. The lists are endless, and the lists are there. I found these doing a very quick 30-second search late last night. You are obligated to find the stories of Black people and then share them. You are responsible to do that. It shouldn't just be those first 32 names that I read off and the same names that we read to each other every year. The way that Black History Month is celebrated now is deeply problematic. Black History Month, with its concerts and its staged readings, and with sermons like this one, which is almost over, I promise, is a problem. These stories are rich and they are beautiful. What happens is we pay a steep price for distilling the entire journey of a people down to a handful of names and repeating them over and over in a 28-day cycle once a year. The way we handle African American History Month right now does more harm than good. It's important that we publicly remember and tell the stories. It's important that we talk about the lives lost alongside of the successes that occurred. It's important that it isn't just me talking about this. So I have moved from the sermon, "I Hate Black History Month," and telling people about the gray days of February and the shortest month of the year and the sarcasm that goes along with that, to wishing, hoping, and wanting everyone to have a piece of Black joy and everyone to love the Blackness. Because if you don't, ask yourself this question: who will besides me and my friends? Who will? I'll close today with a poem that I've been reading over and over since I talked to you all on MLK Sunday. It comes back to me this time of year. It's by Maya Angelou, and it's called Human Family. I note the obvious differences in the human family. Some of us are serious. Some thrive on comedy. Some declare their lives are lived in true profundity, and others claim they live the real reality. The variety of our skin tones can confuse, bemuse, delight. Brown and pink and beige and purple, tan and blue and white. I've sailed upon the seven seas, I've stopped in every land, I've seen the wonders of the world, not yet one common man. I know 10,000 women called Jane and Mary Jane, but I've never seen any two exactly the same. Mirror twins are different, although their features jibe, and lovers think quite different thoughts when lying side by side. We love and lose in China, we weep on England's moors. We laugh and moan in Guinea, we cry on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, are born and die in Maine. In minor ways, we differ. In major, we're the same. I note the obvious differences between each sort, each type. But we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. Yes, we are more alike, dear friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, dear ones, than ever unalike. The words of the poet Maya Angelou. Blessed be. Row 7, there's a river flowing in my soul. Please rise and embody your spirit.
1, 2, 3. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. And then take the third ending. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my mind.
as we extinguish our chalice this morning, the words are in your order of service to share along with me. We extinguish this chalice, knowing not the answers to all things, yet seeking the answer to one more thing than we know.
Leave this place and this time and these people knowing the person to the left of you and the right of you wants to be in relationship with you, knowing you get to make mistakes and begin again, and knowing most importantly, you are never on this journey of life alone. Every single one of us is with you. Leave this place knowing these things and loving these people. Amen.